Good evening and welcome to the Cedar Falls School District Board of Education meeting on Monday, December 9th, 2019. I'd like to call this meeting to order. There has been one item on the agenda this evening that needs to be tabled, and that is item L. So without objection, that item will be tabled for the time being. We'll take it up at a future meeting. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved by Susie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Jeff. Seeing no comment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Item C, public comment. Are there any public comment?
Nope, we do not.
Okay, all right, great. Moving on to communications. Our student rep, Rachel.
Hello.
So for students in at the high school, right now we are helping with the Cedar Falls Holiday Hoopla event. And so some of us have been volunteering for little things out there, but our big thing at the school is we're helping Santa write letters back. And so that is something that we're doing in Student Senate, but then also other people in the school have the option to come help in the counseling office. And that's just, there's a lot of kids who write letters to Santa, so we're happy to help out with that. And then our other big thing that we have decided on, so that's exciting, is we're having our snowball or our winter dance, and that's going to be on Saturday, January 18th from 7 to 10 p.m., and that's 2 days after our finals, so that'll be fun, and it's going to be at UNI's Mocker Hall. And so tickets will be $10 for that for students, and that is cool because all the proceeds are going to go to the Gil Typer Scholarship Fund. And yeah, we're hoping to set a precedent of hopefully making it an annual dance that we can raise the funds and it can go to a good cause. So that's what we're doing this year. And then otherwise at the high school, something I've enjoyed is, I don't know who started it, but there's like a door decorating contest, and our school can get a little bland, and so it's fun to have all the winter decorations around. So yeah, that's what I have for today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Any questions for Rachel?
Rich, would you take some pictures and maybe bring them or send them to Janelle so we could just see some of the door decorations?
Oh yeah, there's one really good one in the library. So yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. Moving on to the newsletter. Janelle.
Good evening. Yeah, we'll go ahead and just talk about our communications update really quick. Just wanted to kind of do some reminders as we're looking forward over the next couple of weeks, but we have some congratulations as well. Corinne Brown was named a finalist for the 2020 Teacher of the Year through the Iowa Department of Education. And of course, Corinne is a fourth grade teacher at Cedar Heights Elementary, and it was quite an honor for her and a long process actually to be nominated and then get to the point of being a finalist. So big congratulations to her. Wanted to mention Orchard Hill Elementary ribbon cutting and open house is this Thursday, 5:30 to 7. We'll have the ribbon cutting, a few speakers, and then students will be giving tours throughout the building. A lot to see at Orchard Hill with the large addition, and then all of the renovations that have really just opened up this fall then for that building. So we hope everyone in the community will come out and see the investment they've made in that building. And then, of course, North Cedar Elementary, that's going to be next Tuesday, the 17th, same time frame, 5:30 to 7. We'll have some speakers, and then ribbon cutting with the Chamber and Alliance ambassadors will be at the North Cedar one. And then we'll also have tours of the building and then some refreshments there as well. Renovation and addition is pretty astounding to be able to see when you see what North Cedar had prior to being able to have this addition. So we really, really hope the, especially North Cedar neighborhood will come out and see, again, this great investment that's been made in our community. Want to do a quick congratulations, Gary Coonan. He's our former athletic director, and he's been named to the Iowa High School Athletic Directors Association Hall of Fame. He retired in 2018, and he's one of 4 that will be honored when they are recognized at their state convention. And then real quick, next Monday, the 16th, we'll have the STEM open house. Again, anyone in the community, kind of focus mostly on students though, if those parents of kids 8th and 9th grade, looking at what their courses might be moving forward into the high school. This will be a great opportunity to see the things that they have there. I went kind of quick tonight because I know the agenda is a little lengthy for everybody, but are there any questions?
No questions, but just a comment. I was so excited to see Gary Conan's recognition. Moving here to Cedar Falls a few years ago, Gary was one of the first administrators at the high school that I had the pleasure of knowing and working with. And I also work with the Iowa High School Athletic Association on other programming, and I couldn't think of a better person than Gary to recognize. I was really excited about that. Good for him.
Yeah, great person, great leader.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Janelle. Moving on to the Secretary's financial report.
Yes, if we could pull up the PowerPoint for this evening to review the November financials. If we go to the next slide, for the general fund this evening, we had revenues of $4.8 million. We had expenditures of $5.2 million, with a total cash and investments of a fund balance of $7.9 million. In our management fund, we had revenues of $48,000. We had 0 expenditures this month, with cash and investments of $678,000. Next fund, please. For our capital projects, you'll notice that this fund for revenues and expenditures are 0, as well as our fund balance. This particular fund will remain dormant for a time. You will begin to see activity as we continue with our process with our high school, but for the time being, these funds have been utilized for our Orchard Hill, North Cedar, and Aldrich projects. Our next slide, please. Which is our save dollars. We had revenues of $10.1 million. That revenues is our sales tax revenue bonds that we sold in November, as well as then we received those in November, as well as then expenditures of $301,000. We had a transfer out for our fund balance to Fund 40 of $218,000 with total cash and investments. We had an available balance of $15,113,432. Of that, we had restricted funds of $995,000, so we have unrestricted of $14,118,432. Next slide, please. We had our physical plant and levy. We had revenues of $302,000. We had expenditures of $93,000. With cash and investments, we had a total fund balance of $3,790,000. For our debt service, we had revenues of $201,000. We had our transfer in from our SAVE, Fund 33 of $218,000. We had expenditures this month, as you can remember, as a reminder, actually, we have expenditures 2 times a year. We usually have those in November, as well as then in May, and we had expenditures of $751,912 for a total cash balance of $1,584,000. For our student activity, we had revenues of $124,000. We had expenditures of $96,000. With cash and investments, we had a total fund balance of $622,000. For our trust and agency fund, we had revenues of $25,000. We had expenditures of $13,533. With cash and investments, we had a total balance of $247,518. For our enterprise fund, our nutrition account, we had revenues of $302,000. We had expenditures of approximately $276,000. With total cash and investments, we had a total fund balance of $667,303. For our coffee shop, revenues of $2,430. Expenditures of $1,111, with a total fund balance of $8,121. And then finally, we finish up with our River Hills. At this time, we have not received revenues, nor have we had expenditures for this particular fund. As a reminder, these are services, our consortium, which we are the flow-through for the districts, and we will begin receiving revenues and having expenditures here in the month of December. Are there any questions?
So I have one question on, obviously it was a stellar month for our SAVE account.
Yes.
We had projected a budget of $5 million, and we got $10 million in, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Can you give a little insight into why we got double what we thought we were going to get?
In regards to the,
Well, our budget was around $5 million.
oh, from last year at this time?
Well,
I'm sorry.
Maybe I'm looking wrong at the, because it says our budget amount is around $5 million, and then what we brought in for the current month is $10 million. Am I looking at that?
I apologize. Yes, our budgeted amount was based on this particular fiscal year, not including the tax revenue bonds that we were planning to sell for the new high school, because we had not determined at the time of certified budget moving forward with the particular sale of those particular bonds. So that
Okay.
would be why we show a budget of that particular fund when we have the increase now with those dollars.
Okay, because that's the 10 million that
Utilizing for the new high school project for the infrastructure of that project, yes.
With the save dollars from the 2029 extension date. So those are what we finalized through the process the last maybe 4 months.
Yes.
so those are funds that, the majority of those funds then are destined towards the high school then?
That is correct. Yes, they are all for the high school.
Okay. Wonderful. I wish we could repeat that every month. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the 10-year PEPAL plan. Dr. Petit.
Is there any way we can get this screen showing up? It's not, it's just a lot easier to see the
Yes,
presentations.
we'll ask and see if Denny could
Yeah.
come in to help turn on the lower screen so we can see a little bit more clearly. Oh, perfect, thank you. Otherwise, you'll see me squinting a lot at that top back screen. So the 10-year PEPAL, this is our physical plant and equipment levy. We have a 10-year PEPAL plan that we renew and update annually as we look out 10 years with the physical plant and equipment dollars that are generated each year for the district. Perfect, thank you. So
Thank you.
this is just an annual update. Please ask questions, any insight. There's a lot of information within this 10-year PEPAL plan. Again, our intent is always to look forward at different preventative maintenance and enhancement plans that we have for the district when it comes to either technology and or improvements that we have for facilities. So you can see the process that we utilize. We go through kind of a weighted system to determine and factor in importance. 3 different areas: educational improvement and enhancement. Is it going to certainly make a difference educationally as we look at spending these dollars within our facilities and within technology or transportation? Is there a safety improvement or enhancement to make sure that we have a higher level of safety throughout all of our district buildings, as well as our technology and our transportation? And then efficiency, and that's a hard one sometimes to delineate, because it can be, human capital efficiency, it can be environmental efficiency, it can be kind of process orientation efficiency, but really is it allow us to be more efficient in nature. So then when you go through those weightings, this allows a prioritization, but just because a project might have a higher weighting, it also depends on budget, where that would fit into that 10-year plan, so we try to balance the weighting and the budget. You'll see then, as we kind of dig deeper into the process, we first determine our annual expenditures, and there's a great deal of annual expenditures that we have ongoing. Some of it is transportation. We have a school bus rotation. We now have over, I think, 43 school buses in our district. We replace 2 every year and then 3 every other year, which allows us to keep buses that are older than 16 to 17 years of age, so we have that ongoing rotation. We also have several preventative maintenance with roof and masonry repair, tuck pointing, things like that. We also have a 10-year plan around our roof repairs and maintenance, so that builds out over time with what roof projects, based on their life expectancy and warranty, when those might need to be either repaired or replaced. We do have our student technology devices each and every year, as well as staff devices every 3rd year. We do have maintenance and grounds vehicles, plow trucks and vans and some of those things that we have on a rotation, as well as our technology equipment. And one of the new items that we have in the overall cycle annually is radon mitigation. There's a rotation amongst all our buildings to have radon mitigation and annual updating of that. And then we also now have an annual loop and well exchanger clean-out process for all of our geothermal wells across our district, and that's built in for an annual budgeted amount too. We do project out annual cost increases, but we also anticipate an annual revenue increase, and that is all based on our overall assessed evaluation for the district. Big document. really big document. And so this is just kind of the spreadsheet and just kind of how it looks. And this is something, I don't think we've shared this document with the board, but you have access to the old one, and we'll get this out to everybody as we look at this holistically. The top is all of our build-outs, again, for our annual expenditures, and you can see across the top there's some increases of 2% each year, just as we look at inflationary cost, and it goes across each of the fiscal years now through 2029. Next slide then goes into some of the weighting and projections, and the color coding is simply yellow is something that we're doing now, and green is something that comes up in future fiscal years. You can see some of the weightings that go along with that to look at educational improvement, safety, and efficiency, and then which building that corresponds with. We work annually. We ask our principals for feedback, our buildings and grounds and maintenance crew for feedback, so we can make sure that we are staying ahead and are knowledgeable about potential projects as they come, not only short term, but long term over the course of this 10 years. So this is roughly about 5 or 6 pages long with multiple different projects, with multiple different build-outs, trying to anticipate cost and what they could be as you look at projects that might be 5, 6, 7 years down the road. Some of this is kind of a working document because we don't always know what cost is going to look like for a project, for carpet replacement or tile replacement or something like that as we look 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road. But it is a very lengthy document that has come to be very important in the process that we utilize as we look at projects for facilities, maintenance, and preventative processes across our district. Next slide. A couple of the projects that we're looking at for the summer of 2020. One of the things that we're excited about is we looked and built Aldrich Elementary. We put a full kitchen in Aldrich Elementary, and we are now working to have a decentralized model for a kitchen across our district. And what that means is we've always had 2 central kitchens, and we bust out food to all of our other buildings, to the other cafeterias. But we are working within our 2020 summer projects 3 kitchens to be able to outfit on a small scale to be able to have them be working kitchens. So over the course of the next 4 years, by the time the new high school is built and online, we actually have kitchens that are operable in all of our buildings that can actually make food, serve food, and then clean all the utensils within that kitchen. What we have come to realize is in this day and age, we certainly prioritize and see the importance of making our own food and making sure that that food is healthy and something that students enjoy and really want to take part in. We also have a project that we're going to hear about here shortly, is raising the North Cedar Playground. We have some tile and carpet replacement in 3 buildings. This is earmarked, but we're not sure if it's going to be necessary. Some additional lockers at home, some roof work at home, Cedar Heights and North Cedar, and then some student restroom work at Southdale for this upcoming summer of 2020. You'll see with the next slide, these are just some of the larger projects coming up over the course of the next really 8 years. And again, just in alphabetical order, not in priority order or anything like that. But there's a bus garage and renovation relocation potentially that we have down and earmark some dollars for. We know we're going to have to do some classroom additions and some changes at Peton Homes that are built into our 10-year PEPL plan, as well as finishing some of the last classrooms at Hanson and Southdale that are original classes that have not been updated. We have a heat pump replacement that we know will be needed at Cedar Heights sometime in 2026, 2027 roughly on the life expectancy of that. Some parking lot expansion, some gymnasium air conditioning, as well as the ongoing kitchen renovations, and eventually we will have to focus on swimming pools and what that means for us as a community with the swimming pools that were built in 1978, both at Holmes and Pete. So this is one of the projects that we're going to hear about here in just a bit to set a public hearing, North Cedar Playground. North Cedar has been somewhat of a challenge with our playground there with groundwater. So this is non-flood water, it's groundwater, and there are just 3 pictures. The top left is actually on the northeast side of the playground. You can see where there's standing water. The middle right is actually on the south central. There's a track, a walking track that all our elementaries have, and it's hard to see from this distance, but there's standing water on the track. And then the bottom picture is actually kind of in the center part of that lot and playground. What we have seen is 3 of the last 6 years, our playground at North Cedar has basically been unusable, where we can't mow it. There's standing water. We've had some fencing that we've put up, some temporary fencing, hoping that the groundwater would dissipate, but it hasn't. So it's been an ongoing challenge, and you can see there's been some issues, as we have seen them, with education, the health and wellness, safety and security, and some equity challenges. So that's an item that we'll hear more in just a bit about. Questions?
Andy, I have a couple questions. One would be, as we look at replacing buses, doing a new bus barn, at what point, I know districts have the option of having their own bus fleet or contracting that out, at what point, at what level of growth does that become maybe something to consider, whether we continue to have our own bus fleet or contract that out?
Yeah, I think, there are several things that districts have done in the past across the state, across the nation, where they either insource or outsource different maintenance, some of its residual components within the educational arena. We look and kind of do a comparison every few years, be it food service, be it transportation, be it, name your system. And there are pros and cons both ways, but we know cost efficiency as well as our staff quality and the services that are provided. Having our buses internal is the right move for the district right now. There are some successes across the state where people have outsourced those, but they typically come with some challenges associated with that. And namely, it's just the ability to have people that that are very much committed to the district and are employees of the district.
And I had another question along with that, but, I hope, and I believe we are, but as we continue to look at that, I know the city continues to grow with their public works facilities as well, so I hope that we continue to try and find ways that we can either collaborate and partner with them on whether it's location, service, repairs, things like that, because it would be great to be able to work with them and rather than duplicate a facility or duplicate services. I mean, I think we continue to look at that, but I think that would be a great win-win for the community if there's a way we can partner with the city on that.
We agree. We have so many different potential partners that we continuously dialogue with, be it the city or you and I or the county, and it's so important to look at those efficiencies so we can be, all of us spending the attention needed to spend wisely with taxpayer dollars.
And then my last just comment is I hope as we are looking to talk about lockers, I would really question the need to add lockers to any of our buildings, especially at the secondary level. I mean, I think we need them at the junior high level because if it's still the way when my kids were there, we don't allow them to have their backpacks in the rooms, but I am a strong advocate of not putting any more money into lockers because students, number one, can carry their books with them. We should be looking at ebooks, so they don't need to have a backpack full of books, but I just do not consider that a great use of funding when I think they're largely unutilized. So I would hope we consider options that we don't have to put lockers. That's also real estate that could be used much better for educational purposes rather than unused storage.
Yeah, we still utilize those quite a bit at the junior high level. I think we would, especially those that went on the tours of high schools across Kansas and Minnesota with new buildings and in the state of Iowa would agree that at the high school level, and I think the survey that we provided high school students roughly 2 years ago would say the same thing. About 70% of high school students do not use their locker currently.
And I think that's because they have the choice. I don't know that they have the choice at the junior high. So I guess if we changed our policy, I think that would probably be a fairly similar statistic.
It could be. We also know junior high students, typically with their coats and things like that, will have some kind of a touch point. And the buildings are more compact, but we know with a new building, especially at the high school level, there will be less lockers than there are students due to the fact that most of them will prefer to use those as maybe where they're going. So it could be a region and you use a locker for one class period to put some valuables in, or maybe some other books or supplies in, but then you have the ability to leave that space, carry things with you, and then that locker is actually reset and can be utilized for somebody else, similar to what you see in a lot of different areas like theme parks or things like that. So there's a lot of neat options out there, and more students are much more mobile. As you said, with technology, we have a lot more e-books that are online and continue to look at as we explore into the future, and that's exciting.
Right, and as we continue to grow those junior highs, it will become a longer and longer walk back to your locker to get between classes. So again, I hope we're looking at that from the larger, big picture perspective, not what our current practice is, so.
Yep.
Good. Any other questions? This is a list of obviously projects for next summer and then for beyond that. So it's all high level at this point, but it's a good time to ask questions if you have them about specific projects.
Andy, just broadly speaking. Oops, sorry about that. So with the new high school on board here coming down the pike, so I know that this list, I'm sure, has had several variations, thinking about the current high school down the road. Will we be able to, or woven into the Pebble moving forward, what services or what maintenance how that changes on the current high school as we onboard the new high school? And I know maybe not all decisions have been made about what that older high school how it will be utilized, but certainly the Pebble would surely impact or have an impact on the existing high school as we move into the new high school.
Yes, two different factors with that. Number one, Pebble dollars can be utilized for that, but we also know that as we look at transitioning away from two buildings that we have currently in the district, one is our Educational Services Center, which houses all of our technology department, as well as the alternative school right across from the old AEA buildings, as well as the current administration office off of West First Street. Those buildings, as those are sold, then the revenues off of those can be utilized to repurpose and remodel the current high school. But we also know that there's a portion of that building that is just not usable for long-term upkeep and maintenance, as well as safety, which is the 3-story section to the west of the building. So that'll be taken down as well. So the hope is the revenues from those sale of those two buildings, as well as potential Pebble dollars, can be used for that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I'm just curious to a little bit more into the process of how those weights are determined for each of the projects, just kind of as not as familiar with the process behind this Pebble planning.
Yeah, so a few different factors. Number one, obviously, if it's going to be tied directly into safety, those are going to be pretty easy to be able to determine, especially when it comes to student safety, staff safety. When we've done a lot of our remodeling, when we've done some of our additions, when we've done some of the kitchen work, some of our sidewalk work across our buildings, typically those are going to have a higher safety rating just because it's ease of access and or limiting maybe public community access into buildings. So typically you'll see lower safety weightings on things that might be more preventative maintenance, just due to the fact that those don't have a high impact on safety. The efficiencies are going to really be tied into some of our cost-benefit analysis, some of our processes. Some of it's going to be more of the ability to say when you invest dollars in energy efficiency, there's a payback period for that. We try to determine when those payback periods are so we can determine where that falls as far as an efficiency scale. Then the educational enhancement is a little bit more of a nuance. Typically those are going to be higher when we have classroom remodels. Some of it's going to be things that if aren't done are going to be kind of set or at least not allow us to do some of the educational components that we expect or know we need to do to enhance student learning. You'll see that with, again, some of our classroom remodels. Some of the higher efficiencies are going to be embedded with some of the work that we do with technology and some of those components.
Are those determined through a committee down at the administration or through?
We
committee,
do. Typically,
administrators around the buildings and facilities and?
Yep, typically it's going to be myself working with our facility group to be able to walk through that, buildings and grounds. Danelle will weigh in on some of that just to try to determine where those weightings make sense, and then try to plug those into the budget where they make sense fiscally as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I wanted to just say that I appreciate the decentralized model of the kitchens and the opportunities that that will present to serve fresh foods, particularly fruits and vegetables, and healthier food options in our schools. So thank you for the thoughtfulness that went into that decision-making process. And I also wanted to ask just briefly about the newer buses that we have purchased, are propane-powered, which will be a better environmental choice in terms of buses. But I wonder if we've been factoring in the economic impacts that that might have for our district in terms of cost savings for fuels, and if we're planning on investing in those propane-powered buses as we move forward.
So that was actually a grant that was written by our transportation department through the Volkswagen settlement that came about roughly a year ago. And what we will see is that we will have 2 propane-powered buses, and Bluebird is the one that we that received the bid on that, and you'll actually see the Bluebird is green on the side of those buses, so it's environmentally more friendly. We won't be able to go out of town with those buses at this time, but just because of the filling and stations and where those are located at. But very excited about that as cost savings and the amount of dollars those would be out of pocket versus the amount of dollars they are with the grant makes it very, very efficient. So we're excited by that process. Those are something that wasn't overall in the PEPL plan as we look through that, just in the bus rotation, but it allowed us to be able to spend wisely, be more environmentally friendly, and actually get a larger, better bus for the price that we typically would budget in.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excellent. Great question.
And I just had one more question because I saw it on the list. I know last year when we opened Aldrich and had our first winter out there, there were some issues with students being able to access the school, and I saw that the sidewalk extension was on the list. So can you, with snow flying today, I'm sure parents will be concerned about what happened last year. So can you just share a little bit about what that plan might be and how we plan to make sure students are getting to Aldrich safely?
Yeah, so Aldrich, we have sidewalks on the school property all the way around the school now to the west and to the south, which is really good. We've had some snow fence installed, not only by us, but by the city, which helps immensely as well, because one of the challenges that we had in the first year of the building was snow from the west has a tendency to really drift, and it came into that building and those sidewalks, and it was really difficult to clean. We actually had to outsource some of the work just because of the amount of drifting and snow accumulation that occurred out there. So now the access from the south as well as from the southwest of that building should be much greater and much better access than what it was last year. And it was an unusual winter, we know that, but we certainly wanted to make proactive steps this year, knowing what we knew was the outcome from last year.
Did the developer, I know some of that was not our property, where there were no sidewalks, so has the developer stepped in and addressed that since last year? Or I just want to make sure that people understand we are doing everything we can on the property we own, and we don't own all of it, so there are some steps we cannot take to accommodate those concerns. I didn't know if the developer stepped in and took care of that or not.
We worked with the developer on the south side to put the sidewalk in along the south side of the property, which was not our land, but we worked with them to be able to get that installed, which I think was a really positive step to get access. I think some of the questions that have arisen have really been on lots that haven't been developed yet, or homes that are being built on lots that have not put in the driveways or the sidewalks in front of those homes. So there might be a gap of the length of a lot, which I'm not sure what it is, maybe 100 to 120 feet, where there might not be a sidewalk. And that's certainly something that I know the city works with the developers on and individual property owners on, or a home might be just built and not yet sold. So trying to get those cleared in a timely manner is something I know the city works very diligently on and has been a good partner with us.
Okay, thank you.
While you're on the comment of, on the subject of parking and that, I saw that Holmes parking lot, there's an expansion on there. I've heard a comment from parents that can get a little hectic when Hanson and Holmes are there and just the traffic flow there. What's the plan there?
Well, as a parent, yes, from that area, that can get a little hectic and very thoughtful when we built both buildings close by, very efficient in nature, but now in this day and age with number of students, traffic flow, the fact that a lot of people drive when we have activities there and letting out, elementary time and or secondary time, it can get very hectic. So we also have a plan where we're going to expand some parking, try to do some different things long-term within this PEPAL plan, goes back to safety and efficiency, to have better processes that allow for more parking at the junior high to be towards the junior high on what I would say is the northwest side than directly out in front of the building or into that Hanson parking lot area.
And long-term, a second exit or entry would be great.
That is something we have looked at. It creates a challenging site location, but there are some options. It's just going to be challenging schematic-wise. So that's been in consideration as we've looked at the 10-year plan, what that would look like and mean crossing that site with a second access point, because we would have to go south.
Or working with the city, is there any, they do have a park right there.
They do, and that's one of the challenges, is we always try to keep the green spaces as green as we possibly can, and that would really bring us into the same parking lot that we have, to be able to get the loops that would be most efficient that we've done, say at Aldrich, that we know we'll have at the high school. It would make sense to bring all that traffic to the south, which would put it on 8th Street, and there's some challenges associated with that as well.
Great questions. Any final question? Wonderful. Thank you for the report. We'll move on to North Cedar.
Yeah. As Andy had indicated, one of our projects that are earmarked for 2020 is the North Cedar Playground. This evening we have Mr. John Biederman from Fair Graham. Thank you for being here. He's going to be reviewing the North Cedar Playground specifications as well as then timeline and walk us through the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You guys had a good introduction to the project. I'll just get into it in more detail. As was mentioned, playground at North Cedar's been underwater 3 of the last 6 years. Visited with city staff earlier this year just to see if we could help out and maybe alleviate that problem. And it's not really a runoff issue, it's more of a high groundwater table issue that is just building up. And just kind of due to the nature of the area to the south and, maybe some wetter seasons we've had in the last few years, but that's what's happening. So a fair amount of the playground really is not overly usable. I stopped by several times this year. There was water there every single time I was there, and part of it, and a lot of it's fenced off, not able to be mown. It looks rough, everything that goes along with that. So visited a little bit with the city on ordinances they have for fill in the floodplain and what we could possibly do. And looks like there is a potential solution, which I'll get into the details here. First sheet here, and I just got a few sheets that I pulled out of our plan set, not the entire plan set, and I don't expect everybody to read all the detail here. But this is just existing conditions at North Cedar. North is to the top of the page. We have the crushed stone walking trail track that's, I believe, used for PE students, kind of in the southerly portion. And then there's a playground area with playground equipment kind of in the middle in that shaded area. Just wood chip surfacing in that. There's the paved basketball court just to the north. And then a small baseball, softball type field kind of in the northerly portion, northeasterly portion. And the rest of that is mainly grass area. Very flat conditions, as you can imagine, as you see water in it. It's very flat through the middle. Doesn't really drain out anywhere. The general tendency is to go to the south and into that wetland, but not a lot happens there. And really, like I said, our problem is groundwater. It's just building up and then just very flat areas. Once it gets to that level, you have water over a wide area. There is drainage that comes off from the city street, particularly Lance, kind of right in the far northeast corner. Comes off the street right into the school property, right onto the school area. So not that that's causing the flooding issue, but it just adds some more water to it. And really, as I mentioned, very flat, so once you get some water off the street, it just kind of sits in there, so it doesn't have any real place to go. The entire area is within the 100-year floodplain. So as I mentioned, it's not that we can just put in 6 feet of fill and say our problem's solved. The city ordinance does allow a maximum fill of 3 feet, and we can place that over 1/3 of the property. So that's just some numbers in the city ordinance. So this works out, what we're showing here, what we'll be showing as fill area works out to be just under 1/3 of the property. And we are under, right at that 3 feet of fill, and I'll show you some areas where we're at that. In general, probably averages a touch over 2 feet over the whole area, and it's not like we can just say, well, let's put 3 feet in, because we have very, very flat conditions now. Just adding 3 feet, yeah, it builds it up, but we still have very flat conditions. So we're adding some slope, adding some drainage, just to get this to go somewhere and hopefully be above that high water level. So anyway, that's kind of existing conditions. Here's a slide showing our grading plan, and again, I apologize for the small text, but looking at adding in that 2 to 3 feet, 2+ feet on average. The largest fill area would be inside of the track. So that's kind of the lower area now, so that'll be right up to that 3-foot level. The track area will drain from north, at the north edge of the track, to the south, and then it'll go off into the wetland area. The rest of the site will drain from west, or near the building, to the east, and we're putting in 3 intakes kind of along the easterly side that'll pick up that surface flow, so we're draining across the playground area. Also, I mentioned that stormwater that comes off from the city streets in the northeast corner, and then also there is a storm sewer that was added, I believe, with the recent school addition that dumps out just on the north side of that ball field. So those are some areas where we're getting water coming at us. If we're trying to improve drainage, we're gonna put that all into a pipe and take that, so we'll start kind of just north of the baseball infield. We'll pick up that existing pipe that comes from the school. We'll also connect on the storm intakes that are on Lance, and then we'll run a pipe all the way along the easterly side and discharge that near the southeast corner of this area, or southeast corner of the track. That'll discharge into that wetland area. So any of those inlets that are coming at us will get piped through the system, and then by building it up that 2+ feet, we will be above what we've at least seen for kind of that normal high water level here in the last few years, and still stay within the requirements that the city has. So like I said, we can't just put in 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet. We're limited to 3 feet max, so stayed within that range. The baseball infield, you can kind of see what's there now for surfacing, and we're going to make that a little bigger. So it's going to look maybe a little more like what you're used to with infields. Building that area up about 1.5 feet to get that to drain out. Basketball area, it's in wonderful shape, but it's low. So if we just left it the way it is and built everything up, we'd have a drainage issue on the basketball court. So we'll take that out and put in a new raised pad to get that up above so it can still drain out. Playground area, kind of as a separate project, but kind of in conjunction as well. That playground equipment is going to be will disappear, and then will be replaced with new equipment. The wood chip surfacing will disappear. We are going to do a new concrete pad, which will be below the matting or the safety matting as part of this project. And then as a separate bid, the school will be getting new playground equipment and then new rubber matting for that playground area. So that'll be in conjunction or kind of along the same time frame. So a big upgrade there to the playground equipment. And then one other thing I should mention is the walkway down to this playground area from the school currently is not quite at ADA accessibility requirements. So we're looking at adding a sidewalk, and I'll get into details in a minute, in addition to the main one down that would be considered accessible to get to the new playground area. And I apologize for this sheet. I don't have the ability to zoom in, but this just is a grid of the fill areas that we're looking at, and I can leave a map here you can see in the final plans. This just shows the areas that we're filling in that amount, and it does stay under that 3 foot. So I'm not going to go into that in any great detail. This is a detail of that basketball court playground area along with the walkways. So you'll see the wider walkway that comes down at an angle. That basically replicates what is there. We're actually able to make it a little bit flatter than what's there, but still doesn't quite meet the ADA accessibility requirements. So then you'll see the narrower walkway that kind of snakes and curves its way around at the top. That will stay under or will be within the ADA slope requirements. We have a tree there to avoid, so we're kind of going around that. And then that'll match up with the southwesterly corner of that new playground area. Playground will have a sidewalk around the perimeter and then the rubber matting on the inside. And then basketball court will be on the northerly part. We're repurposing or reusing the picnic tables that are in that area that are into that existing concrete. Those will be removed and replaced. Also looking at one light that'll be kind of in the middle. If you see the little offset there in the bottom or to the east, there'll be one light there, I believe, with directional lighting, one go towards the basketball court, one to the playground for just a little additional safety or security in the evening or nighttime hours. So that's kind of just an overview. The other thing that I'll mention with the fill requirement with the city is the fill that's brought in must come from a close by area and at a similar elevation. So we can't bring in, and basically within the floodplain, so we can't bring in material from 5 miles outside of town and put it in the floodplain. So we've identified actually a city-owned site that is quite close here that meets those requirements, and that is likely where the fill material would come from. So any questions? I guess I should jump over to the timeline. Oops.
Couple of points of just additional information. Part of the construction process at North Cedar was the playground area as well as some of the matting and as John talked about, the safety structures underneath the new playground. Some of the concrete work was going to be done this past summer, but there were some delays, and then the water table, and once we found out, because we had several of the neighbors as well as some of the residents out there start talking that this could be a possibility with how much water has been sitting out there from the groundwater, that's when we said, well, it doesn't make sense to do some of the concrete and re-establishing the new playground out there until we fully investigate what this could look like and mean. So they've been extremely patient. We've had recess out there at times when we blocked off the street to the west because of the playground being unusable, and I can never remember the name of the street that runs north and south to the west of North Cedar. Fern, thank you. And at times we've used Lance for some of the very similar activities just because the playground out there has been unusable. So this is an opportunity not only to use some of the dollars from the construction process with the right timing and the efficiency, but also some of the processes with bringing that up to a level that has no adverse impact on the neighbors, but also has an opportunity to be utilized now efficiently and effectively year-round.
Okay, yes. So schedule, if we can put that up. So tonight we're at the presentation and then looking at a public hearing on the 27th of January, bid opening early February and the 5th, award contract at your February meeting on the 10th. Construction, we'd wait till school is out, so that puts us at June 2nd of that week. And then looking at completion of construction kind of at that end of summer or before the next school year starts.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
Just clarification on the date of the public hearing. Got two different dates. Got the January 27th on the presentation timeline, and then on my motion, it's the 13th.
Well, that is interesting. I'm looking at the 27th on the screen. Either one is our motion or our upcoming board meetings, but I think the intent tonight was to set the public hearing for the 9th. And I'm looking at both John and Danelle on this. We always map out multiple different projects, and I believe this project was intended to set the public hearing tonight for the 13th, with the public hearing occurring on the 13th. I'm wrong. I can see the reaction already.
This evening is to set the public hearing, but it would be held on the 27th of January.
Thank you for the clarification. And that was due to timing of when we can post and when we can advertise. And
Yeah, we had a little conversation after our previous meeting that
I
thought that
apologize,
might
that was
work
my error.
out better.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
I have another question real
please.
quick.
Okay,
So we know that when we have flooding out there, we are talking about the southeast corner comes in on that football field. So it will still be, I mean, it's still going to flood out there.
When we get a major flood,
Flood.
it's still, right.
It's still going to,
Yes.
it's still going to be
Right,
that way.
but those events typically go down reasonably quick. It's just what we've seen in the last few years. It's just that high ground table. It's not related to rainwater. I mean, indirectly, because rainwater feeds the groundwater table. But it just sits there. Like this summer, it's just sat there all year. And you've kind of seen that in other years also.
And then the track, will the track also be lifted up by 2 to 3 feet?
Yeah, right, yep. So
And
2 to
we'll-
3 feet on the track area.
And that will, that's their cinders out there.
It'll just be limestone. It's
Limestone.
limestone today, and that's what we'll put it back as limestone.
Great.
So it's not going to be hard surfaced, it's just used, it's not a competition track, it's just an exercise.
It's just, that's right. Great, thank you.
So John, for those who have a little bit of farmer in them,
Yeah.
you have a wet field, you just go out and pattern tile it, right?
Yeah.
Can we just pattern tile this and
It has no
solve our
place to
wet?
go. That's the problem. So we're at the water table. When you see water start to creep up in the playground, that's where the water table is in the whole area. So there's no place, in a field, you're up higher and you can put tile in and you can have an outlet, that'll gravity drain out. We have no place to gravity drain this. So if you look at that wetland to the south, that water level would be the same coming right up into the playground. So there's really, other areas we can do that, but here, when it's groundwater driven, we just don't have an outlet for it. So that's kind of the uniqueness of this.
Okay.
One more question, and I think you alluded to this, not impacting the neighbors that are there.
Right.
So you'll have some slope, and you talked about it feeding into the wetlands, and that wetland area can accommodate.
Yeah. So
water.
we're not really adding any water that doesn't get there today. Everything that falls on this area today, it's just soaking in and adding to that groundwater level, and it all just evens out. So really, we're not taking water from anywhere else, that's going somewhere else. It's everything that lands there today is still going to land there and really no more. So really no impact on that at all.
Okay.
I think what Susie had asked is an important question. During those 100-year floods, 500-year floods, the playground will still be underwater.
It'll be underwater, yeah. The 100-year floodplain comes right up to the northeast corner of the building. It's like right at the corner, so that still remains. But those, they come up and, it's unfortunate. Those typically go down relatively quickly, at least much more quickly than the high water table we've seen that's lasted for years, essentially.
And Andy, I have a question. Just from my historical experience with the district, it has been kind of our partnership with parent groups that they usually fund replacement of playground equipment for safety. I know that at Lincoln, I believe the parent group really was largely involved in fundraising for that safety matting. Is that going to be a similar case here with North Cedar?
Yeah, there's some fundraising that they have done. Some of it is for some equipment, some other things as well. So I couldn't tell you the dollar amount specifically, but there's some fundraising that has occurred and will continue to occur.
Does that continue to be kind of the way we approach things like playground equipment and things like that? Or is it done on a, I mean, it'd be nice if that is consistent across the board.
Yeah,
We're
it's-
being equitable with all of our
Yep,
elementary
and,
buildings.
you know, a lot of it depends on size of the building and number of parent groups and parents involved. And, you know, there are some playgrounds where when you have 500 parents, it's easier to fundraise. So we try to make it balanced, as in a balanced approach, but also equitable and fair. It's, what always is fair in some people's minds is a little bit different from what is always equitable.
Those are not always the same things, but
Yep.
just wanted to make sure that that was still maybe part of a cooperation that we are having with the parent group.
All right. Well, great questions. I am going to entertain a motion now, and then we can, if there's any final questions. Go ahead.
I move that the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Education approve the plans, specifications, and form of contract, and set January 27th, 2020 at 5:30 PM as the date and time to hold a public hearing for the 2020 North Cedar Playground Project.
Thank you, Nate. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from Alan. Now, are there any other questions for John or otherwise related to the public hearing? All right. Seeing,
Okay, good.
very good. Thank you.
Thanks,
John.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Sorry about the confusion with the public hearing day, too. My fault.
Very good. Moving on to a high school update.
Excited to have Brian Sanderman here this evening with Envision Architects.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Doing high school update. So it's been a little while since we've talked, and really, I think it's been probably 3-4 weeks since we've been here, and that was really when we were getting the project kicked off and having kind of teacher kickoff meeting. So wanted to come back. It's been several weeks, and so we wanted to get back and tell you what we've been doing. A few of you have been part of some of our meetings, so you can fill in the gaps if I miss something. So this slide is probably a few weeks old even now. So we've had a few more meetings and met with a few more people. So we've met with a lot of folks, 1,000 folks, over 100 different meetings in the last 10 plus weeks. And really all that comes down to what we've been calling in the office our chaos slide. It's all the input that we've been getting from the different groups. So meeting with staff, community, meeting with students, as well as then different things as we develop this process we need to take into account. Site, and you see the big circle, the dollar signs. Need to take all these things into consideration and kind of create the balance. And so that's what we've been up to, and really we've been in the listening stage here now. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit. Our process, what we really look at is a process of discovery, strategy, and implementation, and we're in that discovery phase where we're, like I said, really listening and trying to understand everyone's needs and wants and balancing those with everything you saw on the previous slide. And then we'll be getting into the other phases as we move forward and add more detail to the project. So calling this Insight Week 2.0, those of you that remember in 2018, we did Insight Week and had several community meetings as well, and kind of helped establish what was brought to the community in terms of the pre-bond information and development. So similar format in terms of several meetings and this time around in 2019 as we re-kicked off the project after the bond passed. So we had that staff kickoff meeting with everyone there, giving them an update of where we're going with the project and getting some of their input and letting them know what the process would be like. Talked with teachers in what we call programming meetings, and that was really listening to all the departments and getting to understand what works for them, what are the challenges in the existing building, what are the opportunities we would then have in the new high school, and listening to their wants and needs. So lots of Post-it notes, lots of sketches, and working through those things with all those groups. Also had student meetings as well, had a great student group there, a pretty good cross-section of the school, so that was great. and even had the tiger in the corner watching over us as we had our meetings. And so that was good input from the student inside as well, to see how those things that we are hearing from community and teachers, how that balances out with what we hear from the students as well. And a lot of similar things. So that was great to hear a lot of commonalities in what's important to the students and what's important to the teachers through that process. Had some community meetings as well. We met with a group from UNI, the city, had a broad parent group that we talked with as well. So several groups getting their input on some broader concerns and planning of the school. We also have then, as part of this process, some of these meetings have involved several consultants that were taking part in this project with us. So we're working, we'll have a theater component as part of the project, very important acoustics in that theater, as well as there's areas of the entire school that will be evaluated by our acoustical consultant. So we're taking those noise considerations across the school into account, not just in those more traditional areas that you would think of for acoustics. Food service is going to be an important piece, as we were talking a little bit earlier about the decentralized model that the district is going to. The high school then plays into that, into its kitchen and how that's able to support those other kitchens in the new model. So we have a food service consultant that will be helping us with that. Audiovisual and technology is going to be huge for this building, right? We're going to be thinking about that differently. We've had a kind of initial kickoff meeting with that group and talked with several departments, as well as the district IT department, to kind of think about what's the new high school look like, and how do we engage AV and technology in that new school. And then you see pool on there. The pool is really a future planning effort. As what was mentioned in the future PEPL dollars and projects coming at some point, we need to do something with the pools. And so we're definitely planning for that at the new high school. That isn't in the current dollars, but we're making sure we're thinking about it now and can have a good plan moving forward and take those considerations into account in the initial designs, so we're not putting a hurdle in our way down the road. Okay, in terms of other input, a few of us maybe saw us out in the community. We were at a football game. We also went to a farmer's market and got input from the community in a few different ways, and also trying to just get more awareness in the community that the project's happening, and get some input and dialogue. So this was a great morning at the farmer's market. You can see all the green dots there if you look past the bike helmet, and what they were looking at. And on the other side of that image, some of what we call spectrums of where we want to fall with different questions that we ask the community. And we looked at being, do we want to kind of stay as we are, be a regional leader, be a national leader? Those green dots all push to the national leader side. So your community's excited about how this building affects learning, and how this building affects how the community thinks about themselves educationally, not just regionally, but across the country. So that's pretty powerful. Looking at the building as obviously major community use, and we asked questions about student-centered learning versus teacher-driven learning, and a lot of the dots push to the student-centered side of that. So a lot of great comments from the community, and great to get their input. Did a similar thing then with the staff in terms of those questions, and a few different questions were on there as well. A few things to highlight would be what they look at as most effective learning. If you look at maybe the fourth item down there, most effective learning occurs during peer-to-peer collaboration and projects. So that was an important component to the staff. So what we try and do with these is then, as we're developing the design of the project, is making sure anything we can do from infrastructure, layout, configuration is really echoing these things. We start to call these design drivers, and it really helps us guide the process and how the building starts to come together. Student input as well. We got the students out there, lots of fun with lots of dots. This board was actually up in the lobby of the high school, and similar questions to them. If we go to that same question, most effective learning, they put field trips. Well, not surprising maybe. They want to get out of the classroom a little. Hopefully in the new building and new campus, we'll have some more exciting things to engage them actually right there and not wanting to get out. But still, the lab component, you can see to that, they really are leaning towards that experiential learning and wanting to be engaged in their learning experiences at the high school. So, like I said, we had that Insight Week. We developed these drivers actually previously in 2018 when we did the first Insight Week. And really, as we went through this last Insight Week, we felt these drivers really held true. And so we feel they're a good stepping stone for us as we use them as our sort of guide points in developing the design. So they're connectedness, community, co-location, and diversity. And some of the things to highlight in the connectedness, and some of these overlap in terms of, obviously, there's connectedness to the community and some of those things. So a big piece of what we're going to connect to, we're obviously adjacent to UNI, so there's some potential sharing opportunities there that we want to take advantage of. In terms of academics, we heard from most of the departments they feel siloed in the current building today. So how do we break down that? How do we have a configuration where the English department isn't on one end of the building and other departments are clear on the other? Or today you've got media on one end of the high school and English on the other. How do we get those to be closer together and start to develop a little more in an interdisciplinary configuration to that? And in that interdisciplinary route, as we lay the building out, we want to think about that as well. Set it up for how the building is operating today, but also allow it to be flexible and adaptable to different learning styles in the future. Connectedness also goes to the environment. We've got a new site out there, lots of great opportunities. We can connect to the pedestrian bicycle trails, make sure we're thinking about that as we pull students into the site and bring those connections from the community through there. We've got Green Hill Road, which already has bike trail extensions, so just taking those natural elements and bringing them in and inviting the community into those spaces, as well as thinking about the building sustainably, important aspects of air quality and daylighting. We heard a lot of windows wanted in classrooms, not surprising, especially from those that maybe don't have any or have a little bit of a window. So we'll see what we can do there as we continue to develop the planning. So on to community and co-location. Some of the exciting things here are creating community spaces and that access to them, wanting to make sure this building is about community pride. Obviously, we're spending dollars from the citizens of Cedar Falls, and we want to make sure they're going to be proud of this building. We want to have engaging opportunities in the building and highlight what's happening in the spaces within the building and connecting to the community. So if we can kind of force natural collisions in the building in terms of learning, and that goes back to a little bit of that interdisciplinary mix, instead of just having those students in certain areas or teachers in student areas, allowing more collaboration, get into some of the 4 C's that I know Andy likes to always talk about, so that communication, that collaboration, all of those things, getting those spaces where creativity and that critical thinking can happen in lots of different ways, not just in a single classroom or learning studio type of space. So that's what we're really, these things start to make us think about as we start to put our pencil to paper here. And then diversity. We really want these spaces in this building to represent all, meaning we've got various levels of students in the building. We have various levels of what people are expecting in terms of their experience and what their educational journey is like throughout the building. So we want to make sure we're we're trying to do that. Your motto of every student every day is really important. Each student, as we know, with our kids and those you interact with in the schools, all of them have different interests, they learn differently. So how do we accommodate that in this building and create spaces and environments for that? And one of those things is creating levels of community. We see private to public being important in this building, and also noisy to quiet spaces, and wanting to make sure we have that variety. In the current high school, it's a lot of similar type spaces. So we've really heard a diversity of types of spaces throughout the building that allow learning to happen in many different ways. The other thing we've done is gone on tours. There's been tours, what we call our South tours to schools in the Des Moines area, then also into Kansas City to Blue Valley and Olathe. And then we had a North tour recently in October that went to several schools in Minnesota. So we had a great time visiting those schools and really seeing the components of each of those schools that get pulled out and seem to resonate with the group that toured those. So I have a series of several slides here, and I'll just kind of go through these quickly that were maybe some highlights or things that we've pulled out or the group has pulled out throughout our discussions that are kind of important in each of these different areas. And again, these are just alphabetical, so no specific order here, but things like athletic fields. There was a school in Dinah that had turf fields really close to the school, and it really kind of created this outdoor active zone right next to the school, which was pretty cool to see. Athletics in general, there was a series of facilities where having the athletics a little closer to the building seemed to be able to use those spaces in a more multi-purpose way versus some of those spaces being off in the back area of the school, less used, harder to get to. So we think there's a value to bringing some of those things closer into the building and let them be used in more of a multi-purpose way. Cafe, coffee shop, that's something the students get excited about. At Shakopee, they had a great cafe area that was also close to their commons and their kitchen space. So thinking about those things as we develop the building. In terms of curriculum, we saw lots of different models. Folks were doing academy-style model. We saw some interdisciplinary type models as well. So wanting to just, as I said, make this building adaptable, knowing that model and how the district wants to approach that could change. This building is going to be here for a long time. We want to set ourselves up to be flexible and adaptable for those future modes of learning and education. What else? Sorry, there's lots of notes here. In engineering, lots of writable walls. We saw that throughout the St. Cloud School. Lots of surfaces. And we've heard that's resonated with the teachers as well. More whiteboards. They like to write. Those teachers like to write. So we hear a lot about that. Family and consumer science, a connection to commons. We've heard that comment as well, not just seeing it on tours, but from staff, those events that happen in that common space, being able to multi-function that family and consumer science kitchen potentially during those events has some power. Innovation Hub was one exciting space that we saw at Shakopee. It is one of probably the only schools really pulling a piece out of other areas that students could go to and schedule that wasn't part of the classroom, that has other resources in it that maybe you wouldn't have in your classroom. So excited what that could maybe be as we think about that in this school. Areas where students can go do more ideation projects together versus being out in a hallway that they don't have capable space. So really thinking about that in a different way. Let's keep going here. Interior design, components, natural lighting, warmth were some of the big things that people like. The image that you're seeing there with those warm ceiling components. That it's a concrete floor and white walls, but that some of those accents of warmth and wood, and how to do that to keep us balanced with using durable materials. There, obviously, that wood's at a location that can't get beat up, and we've got a concrete floor, durable, usable, so different ways of able to achieve a great visual and great experience for the building, but in a pretty economical way. And student pride, you see the excellence banner there, thinking about ways of doing that. Several schools did that, but a lot of them said we really did those moments in certain areas and let the rest of the school, the rest of the school doesn't have to be all about school colors. And several schools sort of reiterated that. Let's do those moments where they have the impact, where we want to have those sort of rah-rah school pride moments, but the whole school doesn't have to be that. You can bring warmth in, you can bring some of those other colors and palettes into the building. A lot of furniture looking at, so back to that diversity and needs of all students, thinking about things that are flexible in terms of lifting, in terms of how students are seating, tables are moving around, so we don't just have tough desks in a classroom that don't roll. So that's definitely one thing will be part of the new school. Other pieces here to point out would be, I guess, site a little bit. There are some exterior components to a few sites with exterior amphitheater, those exterior areas that could turn into learning as well on the site, and creating a strong connection of front door and what that invitation to not only the students, but also what that is to the community, to those community spaces. So a lot of tour stuff, the small learning communities, there's a lot here because that's really one of the key, that's the thing, right, at the new school. We think that is really important and something we're spending a lot of attention on. So it's a lot about flexibility, it's about adaptability, being able to activate spaces not only in the classroom but outside the classroom to allow the students to have breakout areas. We hear teachers breaking their classrooms down and not just sitting in front of the room and talking. Aldridge has some of those spaces, and we're hearing great things about what they call, I think, the heart of the school in some of those spaces, and they get great use. David Jakes, who's part of one of our consultants that I didn't mention on the other screen, an educational consultant, went and toured that school and got great feedback of how the students are using those spaces and how the staff is engaging in them. So some similar themes into what we would want to be developing here as well. And I think I'll just flip through these. I'm getting long-winded here. A few other things just to kind of hit on, and some of these you've maybe seen previously, are kind of the benchmark of square foot per student as we size the building and look at it and how we measure that against what's happening elsewhere across the state. And just wanting to be mindful of that. We don't want to short-suit ourselves, but we want to kind of right-size ourselves. So we're always kind of looking back at these benchmarks and seeing where we fall and what's right for Cedar Falls High School. This is a breakout of where we've come in terms of space programming. So listening to all those departments, then developed into space-by-space room programming and what the square footage of those is and how they represent percentage across the entire square foot of the school. And this is a little hard to read, but again, it's what it shows is a comparison to what we call the wants. The 2019 wants are red. Fielding Air did a program with the district in 2014 when you were first looking at the initial high school. That's in the lighter pink salmon color, and then the gray is the existing high school. So you can kind of see where we're at and compare different areas there. And a few things to take away from that space. We want to make sure we're looking at things like the academic core. You can see we're a little we're a little different than what Fielding Air have, but if you look at the existing school, creating a lot more area and trying to be efficient with how that is developed and having those educational opportunities being an important part and square footage in the building you see there. What else did I want to point out? The engineering and manufacturing were a little larger than today and larger than Fielding Air. Some of those depend on if, with autos and metals and woods, the programs that are really in the existing school today and we want to move forward with are kind of driving some of the sizes of those spaces. So this then takes those spaces and looks at them with students. It's a little hard to look at the graphic, but if you look at the bottom line, that's kind of what's important. So when we look at the current program, the Fielding Air and existing high school is kind of showing the capacity of the building with the areas that we're proposing for the new high school compared to the existing building. And what this is looking at is really 25 students in a classroom, teachers teaching essentially 6 of 7 periods in those classrooms, and that shows you the efficiency factor of how the school works out. And it tests pretty well when we look at the existing high school. That's pretty close to the current capacity of the existing high school and what we would look at with the new high school. So we're up to close to 1,500 with that. We're really planning for 1,400, so there might be some space to push and pull as we get into the configuration and layout and look at different spaces in a floor plan. So I talked a lot, sorry. I haven't been here in a long time, so questions, other, what do you want to know about next steps?
Brian, you had mentioned that we had talked to students, we had talked to teachers. Did we include other staff like food service, custodial, other support staff, secretarial, for instance, in those groups?
Yes, we've talked to all of those groups. Food service has been involved in several meetings with the food service consultant there at the table as well. We've met with Rick and a few of his staff on the maintenance side, custodial side of it. So we're trying to include all of those groups across the building, so we're taking into account all of their needs as well.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Oh, I was just gonna, there was a lot of information, like you said in there. Is that gonna be made available? Will those slides be posted in our high school section of the website, maybe?
Look at Janelle.
Yeah, so this presentation tonight is basically the information that'll be on the new high school website planning.
Perfect.
Literally kind of working on it as we speak.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
is that a website that's not yet published? Okay.
It's not yet published, but I would say probably within the next couple days. I wanted to wait until we had this information to the board before we put it out there.
Okay.
So we'll have another e-newsletter in another couple weeks. So before Christmas, I'll send a link out to all parents and staff as well, so they'll have the information they can go to. But it'll be, you can get it from our homepage as well once it's live.
Right. Excellent.
I have a question, and it's more for Andy as we're looking at, the possibility of being in new spaces. This seems like a great opportunity for us educationally to review our programming and how we're delivering education. So, some things I hope we're thinking about is, as we're looking if we need all the current programs we have right now, the Career Center is offering great programs as well in Waterloo, especially with a lot of their trades programs. I saw that some of those schools didn't have, say, an auto program or things like that. So, that to me would be a great opportunity to look at how we can collaborate with our neighboring districts, with Hawkeye Community College. If they have those facilities, if they have those programs, maybe an opportunity for us to make some differentiation in how we deliver that. If we're doing the same programming or the same model in a space that allows elsewhere that is not us taking advantage of the space that we're getting. So I hope we're looking at that. Something I would think would be really progressive would be interdisciplinary classes. If we have, say, a marketing class, there should be no reason that we just have a marketing person teaching that class. We could have math, English, art, and business all involved in teaching a similar class. So it would be great if we really want to be a national leader, we can't just think in terms of our facility. We need to be thinking in terms of how we're delivering education. So if we have some really progressive teachers who want to look at how to partner in an interdisciplinary way, I mean, that would be really exciting to me. So I hope that we're having the opportunity to provide some leadership for those teachers who are willing to really think differently about how we're looking at education.
So I think the answer to the questions were yes, yes, and yes.
I had a question about how some of the project feedback and initial, can't think of the term, but anyway, like with the students, how were they invited? Were they all invited, open invitation to anyone who was willing to come and offer their opinion on what might be in what they would like to see in the project? You showed like the pictures of some of the meetings occurring at the high school, and then just to kind of follow up so I can get the other question out before you answer is community feedback as well. Can you give some examples? I saw a picture of the farmer's market where you had the board out. What are some other venues and locations that you went out into the community to seek public feedback and input on the project?
Sure. So on the student side, we asked for a student meeting. So the first student meeting, that was a smaller group that I talked about, some of those images. So that was a group put together by the high school staff. They kind of did a cross-section of the students, and it was a pretty great group and a nice cross-section, I felt, in terms of who was there. And then you saw one of the boards with lots of red dots on it. That was essentially invited for everyone in the entire school to have access to, set up just in the front lobby there in front of the auditorium. So all students had the opportunity to grab a red dot and vote there. With the community engagement piece, we went to a football game the Friday night before the farmers market, actually. So we were at a football game, and then we also went to the community farmers market, and that's really what we did in terms of specific outreach into the community. And then we've had some invited community members, a cross-section that was invited into a meeting as well.
A couple things too. Rachel actually is involved with our student board rep, involved with I don't remember which group that's called, but the kind of a
educational leadership team.
Thank you. We have about 7 different teams that are working at different times on different components, and she's on the educational leadership team, which is really exciting to get her input and feedback during that process. A lot of the community meetings that we've had too, and Brian could speak to this, we had targeted community meetings, sometimes parent reps, some of them community reps, UNI reps, Hawkeye reps, I'm just business reps. I'm just trying to think of all the different groups that we've had to have come in to give feedback, provide insight, and kind of some of their hopes and wants that they would see with the new building and what that could impact and mean for our community at large. So try to get quite a cross-reference, and Brian said, I think early on, it's now over 100 or 1,000 people that we've had contact with, which is amazing to be able to get that insight and thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think we'll want to continue that, get out in the community a little bit as we get to the next step is really taking this information and we've been starting to develop, the plan, kind of distilling all these wants and needs and trying to develop plans. So as we do that, we'll get out in the community as well, because we really feel you guys you really want to share this and let the community feel like they're a part of it and see it coming along. So we'll kind of work with Andy and Janelle and others about how we want to go about making sure we're out there engaging and giving people updates of what's going on.
Yeah, I would just like to see that, some creative thinking in terms of other avenues to reach the public. Some of the football game and the farmers market can be pretty self-selective in terms of what kind of populations go to those.
Yep.
Just be creative in what kind of other areas you might be able to reach the public with.
You bet.
So, thank you.
Andy, in any way that we can engage Ethan and having some CAPS projects possibly come out of this project would be amazing to have our students involved in some of the processes in terms of a CAPS experience. So.
Yeah, and that's been exciting too. We've had some of our CAP students involved with Envision on this, some other 3D modeling, things like that. So it's been pretty neat to see what that means, what that looks like. Because again, this is what CAPS is all about, those real life projects.
Excellent. Thank you all for comments. Thank you, Brian, for coming here. Again, thank you to our community for approving this, and we're very excited about having our community engaged in this process as we design and build a new high school for Cedar Falls. So thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Moving on to item I, approval of the 2021 SBRC administrative costs for River Hills Consortium.
Yep. This is an actual annual request, and it's for the School Budget Review Committee for special education administrative cost. This is the first of 2 agenda items, so if Janelle could pull up the PowerPoint for me this evening, and for the next slide, please. Just to give you a little background again in regards to River Hills Consortium, the consortium consists of approximately 39 public school districts this year. And this year for 2019-20, we have 28 public schools that have students enrolled at this time. As a reminder, the purpose of the River Hills Consortium is to provide that education to those students that with moderate and severe disabilities, as well as then currently this year for 2019-20, the River Hills is serving 93 students from ages 3 to 21. As a reminder, the consortium is contracted service through Central Rivers AEA, so we contract their staffing services for the teachers, the paraeducators, and administrators, as well as then we lease the facility. Normally, administrative cost is not an allowable special education expenditure, but due to the consortium and requirements, this is an allowable expenditure, and therefore the request this year, and it must be made 1 year in advance prior to receiving approval. We can go to the next page, please. So for 2019-20, the total administrative salary cost is $142,000. It's divided by the consortium with this year is 93 students. We have currently 11 students currently enrolled, so it comes to $16,895. We add those additional costs of the FICA and IPERS for a total request this year of $19,782.50. Again, this would be actually added to the district's special education cost of 2021. So we're asking in the future for these particular requests. Is there any questions on River Hills?
Just one question. So we contract the services of AEA, Central Rivers. Do we have much control over the FTEs, for instance, of administrators, that sort of thing?
No. So they're not our employees. They're employees of the AEA. They keep the ratios and aligned with the student needs and the individual IEPs of those students that are there. I know they have 23 teachers this year. I'm not sure how much administrative support that they have there. So it's kind of varied on just different year-to-year aspects, and then how it's tied back into the overall consortium.
Okay.
We are the fiscal agent because that was a state code requirement, but we're not the program provider.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Directors of the Cedar Falls Community School District approve the application to the School Budget Review Committee in the amount of $19,782.50 for special education administrative costs associated with River Hills Consortium program for the 2021 school year.
Thank you, Susie. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Nate? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same side. Motion carries. Moving on to a similar theme for the Lead Center Consortium.
Yep, as I mentioned, this would be the second of those 2 motions. We currently are within a consortium as well as the Lead Center, formerly Bremwood Center. That consists of 18 school districts, and they're located on the campus of Waverly. We currently have students that, for educational services with challenging behavioral needs, and this point in time, there's 47.67 students enrolled this year. Not all students are enrolled at full time. And again, administrative costs are normally not allowed, but due to the consortium and regulations, we are allowed to request these particular administrative costs. And again, it needs to be within a year in advance. So for the review of the actual cost this year, the total administration cost with the 0.67 FTE is $71,581. We divide that by the total number of students for a total of, and we currently have 7.08 students attending the Lead Center with the additional cost of FICA and IPERS for a total request of $12,448.25. And again, this would be for the 2020-21 school year to add those additional costs to our special ed.
All right. You have a question?
Question, this one, though, is not administered by AEA. Is this one staffed by Waverly Shell Rock Schools? Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. Within the consortium model, I believe 2 or 3 years ago, they took over running the program. Still a consortium, but they run the program.
Okay. I'm going to be recusing myself from this vote then, please.
All right. And for those who understand why he's recusing himself, he is a staff member at Waverly Shell Rock Schools. Thank you. Is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Directors of the Cedar Falls Community School District approve the application to the School Budget Review Committee in the amount of $12,448.25 for special education administrative costs associated with the Lead Center Consortium program for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you, Sasha. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Jenny. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to item K, approval of the SBRC application for modified allowable growth.
Yes, if we could pull up the PowerPoint. This again is an annual request to the SBRC or the School Budget Review Committee. It's for increased enrollment, open enrollment out, and then ELL, which is English Language Learners for beyond 5 years. We can go to the next screen. There is a couple parts that consist of this application. One of those would be the increased enrollment, and for this particular year, we were very fortunate that our district continues to grow. We had enrollment growth of 133.8 with the total cost per pupil of $6,880 for a request of $920,544. The next part of the application includes open enrollment out. The district does not qualify for that because of the actual certified enrollment for this particular year. And then we have our ELL. The next screen would be for our English language learners for beyond 5 years. We served 16 students, supplemental weighting of 3.52 with the cost per pupil for a supplemental amount of $24,217.60. For this particular year. Now, one of the questions we normally get is, will this raise taxes? At this point, it's kind of, it's hard to determine that at this point, mainly because of we have not received our evaluations for the year, as well as the cash reserves that are needed for the next coming fiscal year. We normally start to review that in January and February. And we'll return to the board in March in regards to our certified budget to review those particular items. So.
And I think it's important to note, if we go back 2 slides, I think it's really tremendous to highlight we're up 133.8 students. I think our demographer had estimated we'd be up about 80 this year, so we're up another 53.8 students. Funding is always 1 year in arrears, so we are educating 133.8 students this year without the funding, and that's why the state allows you to ask for the spending authority, which is this SBRC application, so we get the authority of $920,544, even though we don't get the dollars associated with that because that does not come until the following year.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Directors, Cedar Falls Community School District, approve the application to the School Budget Review Committee, the amount of $920,544 for modified allowable growth due to increasing student enrollment and increasing open enrollment out students. In addition, $24,217.60 for limited English proficient instruction for students in the program beyond 5 years for the 2019-2020 school year.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Susie.
Before you
Yep.
take an all call, just to clarify, so you're going to submit this for approval, and if it's not approved to the full amount, that would be the reason that we'd have to look to other funding sources to make up the difference. And I just wonder what would be the reason that we wouldn't get full funding if we know that this is the amount that's needed for what we're doing in terms of serving our students.
This is a blanket request. This is normally approved each year. I don't believe in the sense that it will be denied in regards to the funding, but the funding normally comes then the coming year. So in regards to looking at other funding sources, we have not taken a look at in regards to that. Yeah.
So we will get the authority. The SBRC will grant the authority. This is an Iowa code requirement that shows how do you request a spending authority, because they know there's always going to be that funding gap of 1 year in arrears. So what will happen is we will have to decide during the budgeting process how much of the authority we actually enact for cash reserve purposes to build up our cash balances, because we're expending cash right now that we have in our bank in our reserves because we're educating 133.8 more students than what we're getting funded for. So that's where the difference comes in, that at the time of the budgeting conversations, we'll have to decide what's the right balance to make sure we have the cash balances that, based on getting the authority from the state to be able to reserve for those into the future.
Thank you.
So if we've got 15 million that we just got into our save account, it doesn't help us.
No,
Right?
we can't, no, because of the buckets and the silos within the statewide funding process and formula. So you can't use the PEPAL dollars to offset staffing costs, nor vice versa. And each of those silos have specific purposes that are outlined in Iowa code.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
The forecast for evaluation down the road, any predictions with regards to the evaluation, property evaluation? You had mentioned that being a variable.
We anticipate typically annually to have about a 2% increase when we look at budgeting and forecasting out. We've seen a higher amount recently. Some of it varies on TIF areas within the district that we don't have necessarily control over. That's set by the city. But I think recently we've seen anywhere from 3.5% to 5.5% evaluation increases, just due to the fact that our city's growing. And I think last year we had about $100 million added into the taxable valuation alone. So it's been a good growth model. We budget conservatively, but we know that it's typically going to be higher than that. Yeah.
Any other discussion points? Great questions. All right. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign, motion carries. Moving on to, well, we have tabled item L, so we will discuss that at a future meeting. But moving on to the board committee assignments, Dr. Petit.
Yeah, and we tabled it due to the fact that the individual that was going to make that presentation's ill, and certainly want her to be here to provide that. I think there'll just be a little bit more conversation, I think, with that information report. Board committee assignments, there is a sheet at everybody's spot. We'll always put this on our website too. It's just the names of who is interested in serving on different committees, and certainly we would recommend approval. We have multiple different groups and committees, and ranging from the legislative network for board members that attend the forums and events and report back to us on different updates, all the way through the facility design committee and anywhere in between. I think there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 different subcommittees that we have, and 2 of them are complete with the board goals and superintendent goal, so we would recommend as listed. Thank you for people signing up and putting their names down to areas of passion. We greatly appreciate that.
Yep. So this doesn't require any vote. This is our committee assignments that each of us have selected, and it's a good time to, I mean, if you, it's not fixed in stone as well. So if you have a passion for another item, you may certainly sign up.
The only thing that I would state too is the last one. We had 3 board members on the Facility Design Committee, and that's working with Envision. It's not the educational leadership team, but it's the steering committee, I think, for one of the other committees from this, the group working through the new high school. Joyce was on that, but with Joyce's resignation, we have another seat. I put down both Jeff and Sasha just for continuity on that, but I didn't mean to be exclusive. I should have put one more spot for somebody, and it would be great if somebody else would serve on that, just to be able to have that experience, see some of the conversations, and certainly that design component.
I'd be happy to serve on that.
Great. Any others? All right, excellent. Moving on to item N, for resolution approving revenue purpose statement.
Yeah, so there's a pretty large packet of information within the board packet, and this information is the revenue purpose statement, and the conversation we've had for the last multiple board meetings that we are required per state legislature to have a public vote on what's called a revenue purpose statement for the 1-cent sales tax. And within the packet, it talks about what that resolution says and orders, but it orders an election on this revenue purpose statement that authorizes expenditures from the revenue that we receive from the State Secure and Advanced Vision for Education Fund, which is the SAVE Fund. It's the 1-cent sales tax that is statewide. No local property taxes, no local revenue besides, the 1-cent sales tax that goes to the state. Then they allocate that back out to districts on a per pupil allotment. So what this does is says we will receive those funds and we'll spend those funds in the manner outlined by Iowa code that is very specified by the Iowa legislature. It's kind of a redundant step. They've said you have the money, you have the authorization to spend the money. Here are the things you can spend the money on. You need your public to say you can spend the money that you're allocated in the way that's legally authorized by Iowa code, and have 50% of your patrons that say yes to that. We have stated that the purpose of these dollars, at least the major purpose from 2029 through 2051, are going to pay for part of the new high school that we worked with our community on, that the general obligation bond was for 69.9, and we set $1 million, and we said that we would use future SAVE dollars of $43.3 million to offset that $112.9 million project. We did use a revenue bond for some of the SAVE dollars that are in place through 2029 to help offset that and get into kind of a jump start to the bonding process. But this simply calls for the election on March 3rd, which we believe will be the city special election as well, for the revenue purpose statement to authorize expenditures from the SAVE funds to be used for authorized legal purposes outlined in Iowa code.
Does the legislature pay for this election?
No. And every district in the state of Iowa has to have an election for a new revenue purpose statement. All districts had to have this in place by 2009 when this went statewide for the use of the funds through 2029. But since that SAVE dollars were expended, every district will have to go back through this process. And I believe there are about 20 or 30 that did this already. The rest will be happening over the course of probably the next 6 to 12 months.
I guess the good news is that once we do this, we don't have to do it again until 2050.
Or when the legislature hopefully extends out the SAVE funds past that timeline, yes.
Okay.
Could you you said this will be at the same time as the municipal election. This is to fill Mayor Green's seat, is that correct?
I'm assuming so. That's not a process we, could have any kind of say in, but if there is a special election for that seat, which, if, I don't know if they're appointing or anything else, but that would be the time when that would be a special election, because those are set by Iowa code.
And could someone please remind me, is that an at-large seat, or is that?
It is.
That is an at-large seat, okay. So that both those issues would be on everybody's ballot.
Correct.
Yep.
And by 50%, you mean 50% of the people who vote?
Yes, 50% of the people that vote plus one. You just need a simple majority, where the general obligation bond required a supermajority of 60% plus one.
It would be great if our legislative people who are on that committee would maybe talk to our legislators about things like this that really are just honestly a waste of our money and our taxpayer dollars. So that'd be great. I don't know that I've seen this on IASB's radar or anything, but this is kind of illogical that after we've really gotten permission and this is something that is just being done for the sake of being done, it seems.
Yep,
Noted.
yep.
Quick question.
Having said that, would you like to make a motion to,
Sure.
Have we gotten any election costs yet?
We have not received the election costs.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I move that the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Education approve the revenue purpose statement, ordering an election on a revenue purpose statement to authorize expenditures from revenue received from the state secured an advanced vision for education fund, and ordering the publication of a notice of election.
is there a second?
Second.
Second from Sasha. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to superintendent's report.
Yeah, just a couple different items. January 8th is the Board Admin Council Retreat, 9:30 at the central office. Also that night is the joint legislative forum that we always hold jointly with CFEA as well as CFESP, which is always kind of a nice evening at Pete Junior High. I believe that starts at 4:30, I believe, but I'll make sure I double check that. January 13th will be our next board meeting. We do not have a second board meeting in December due to the holidays. And then question more than anything, and I was going to ask the individual ahead of time, and I didn't get to that, but one of our board goals is to kind of have each board member over the course now of the next few months to bring an article that is of interest to them or that we can discuss kind of as a learning opportunity. And I was hoping potentially Nate went to the 14 points of what boards can do for mental health and mental health awareness and sent that article out. So it'd be great if that could be an article potentially we could discuss and talk about at that January 13th board meeting.
Sure.
Perfect.
Just a question about that. I just glancing through it, that was a pretty significantly sized document, am I right? Is there, I mean, not to complain about a reading assignment, but I thought that parts of it were in the order of 100 pages, or am I mistaken? No, okay, okay.
I think.
It's about 7 pages.
Thank you.
Is that acceptable? Okay.
Jeff, could you remind me what class you teach again?
I chose to be a math teacher, so we didn't have to read and write. So.
I think you had the unabridged version. That looks like the executive summary right there. Okay.
All right. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you. Did you have anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right, wonderful. Any other questions, comments, or concerns from board members?
I've got 2 items. We were talking about CAPS. CAPS is seeking projects for spring semester. So this includes businesses, non-for-profits, even individuals. You know, we often have a list of 10 items we need to do. And items 8, 9, and 10, often we never get a chance to get them completed. This very well could be a project for our CAPS associates. So check out their website, easy way to apply, to send. Doesn't mean you're going to get it done. I know my nonprofit has had mine turned down, so, but somebody else might have something much more exciting. And then the school foundation is in the midst of their annual campaign. You should have received a letter at your home. If you have not, please reach out and we'll get you a letter for the annual campaign.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to share, I had the opportunity to take a prospective UNI student over to the John Papajohn Entrepreneurial Center today. And if you haven't been in there, first of all, it is they're a great partner with our CAPS program, But we got to talk to the students, the UNI students who were actually in the incubators growing their own businesses. And it was, number one, fascinating and inspiring to hear them talk about, number one, their own passions, their own ideas of entrepreneurship. But the comments that they were saying was really talking about the life experience and learning experiences they were getting through the Entrepreneurial Center, and sharing that as much as they've learned in their classrooms, you know, they really see that as very crucial, important foundational knowledge, but that real life experience they're getting through their experience through the entrepreneurship program was really what they're captivated by, what they're invigorated by. So I love that, again, I think it's just a great example of the experiences we're giving our students through the CAPS program. I'm excited to hear from our leadership team how we're thinking about expanding those programs down to our just classroom experiences, down to our elementary students, our junior high students. So it was just a great promotion of that we're really doing the right work through the CAPS program, and it made me pretty proud of Cedar Falls that we are being a leader in that in the state. So thank you, Andy, and the team for continuing to support that and make our students have that be an opportunity for them.
Yeah, and our CAPS program was highlighted down at the school board convention as a model program for exactly what we're accomplishing. So a lot of school districts are looking at us as a leader in that. Wonderful. Any other questions or comments? Great. I'd like to just remind our community to get out and see our remodeled schools that have been expanded. So this Thursday, December 12th in the evening, come to Orchard Hill to see the new and expanded Orchard Hill. And then on the 17th, the same event will be held at North Cedar to see the expanded and improved North Cedar. So these are projects that were made possible by the generous support of our community, and it is a great opportunity for you to go and actually see what your money is paid for. So take advantage of those opportunities. Seeing that, I'd like to take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Any?
Second?
Second from Susie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.